to Season 5 of the Hey Girl podcast with your host and my mom, Bethany Needham. This season, we get to hear from some incredible new guests, and we're bringing back some of our faves. Each guest will share their story of running their race in their place, and we hope they inspire you to do the same. If you want more information or to connect with my mom, go follow our new Instagram at HeyGirlGram, friend us on Facebook at HeyGirlPod, or even better, join our brand new Patreon to get bonus materials, hang with my mom, and you get to help Hey Girl continue to grow and reach more people. That's pretty cool. All right, time to grab that seltzer, maybe a tissue box just in case. Here's my mom.
Hey girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Hey Girl podcast. This week, you get to hear from a new friend, Lisa Stoltzfus. That's right, I just learned to pronounce her name properly. I'm feeling good. Y'all, this was an incredible story. I got introduced to Lisa through a mutual friend, Christine. And you may have noticed some advertisements from a company that Lisa started, the Mustard Seed Marketplace, one of our absolute new favorites. Y'all, if you have not checked it out, you need to go there and do all the shopping for all the things. But there's so much that was powerful when I sat down to talk to Lisa, and one of which is I didn't know a lot about her story and even what led her to start the Mustard Seed Marketplace. But we have recently gotten a lot of messages from women who are walking through infertility right now, that's part of their story and their journey. And I honestly did not know that was such a big part of Lisa's story. And so as she began to share, and man, is it powerful, and I just learned so much through her. I just couldn't help but see the hand of God in this being the story that he wanted to be next on Hey Girl. And so for those of you who have reached out, I pray that this is an incredible encouragement to you. And for those of you who are going to listen, and this is going to be something that you just resonates so strongly with, just know that you can reach out to Lisa if you want. You can send messages, encouragement. It was, again, just such a gift to sit and talk to her. And I want to encourage you again, if you haven't checked out the Mustard Seed Marketplace, guys, they have the cutest things. And here's honestly all the companies that we are connected with, or again, our Patreon. You can find all of these things through the website, bethanyneedham.com. And as always, I just want to encourage you to go check it out. We would love for you to join a Patreon, love for you to do your shopping at Mustard Seed Marketplace. And I cannot wait for you to hear the story of where it all began. So without further ado, I cannot wait to introduce you to my new friend, Lisa Stoltzfus. Well, super excited to have Lisa on the show today. Lisa Stoltzfus, that I just nailed your name, I know.
Yeah. You did.
Lisa, I have never met you this is our first face-to-face over Zoom, but I have heard about you through a mutual friend, Christine Rigo, and a business that you run, and just she has nothing but the greatest things to say about you. And so you've kind of been on our list to get on the show, to share your story. And so first off, just thanks for being on Hey Girl.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Like I said, this is my first time doing anything like this. So I'm really excited and slightly nervous, but mostly excited. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So Lisa, for people like me who this is their first introduction to you, why don't you take some time and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am Lisa Stoltzfus, as you said. I'm 32 years old. My husband, Carl, and I have been married for 5.5 years. We both grew up in Northern Indiana. A kind of fun fact, our moms actually lived across the hallway from each other when they lived in apartments before they were married to our dads.
Oh,
and
wow.
So our families are friends from way back. Our dads were both dairy farmers. So yeah, as far as me growing up, like I said, I grew up on a dairy farm, grew up in a loving Christian home. I have my mom and my dad, and then my sister is 5 years older. I was the fifth generation to grow up living on our family farm in Middlebury, Indiana. Yeah, like I said, I grew up in a loving Christian home. I was actively involved in 4-H, showing animals, went to Bethel College in Mishawaka, Indiana, graduated, moved to Nashville, Tennessee as just like a total spur of the moment, fun on a whim kind of thing with a really good family friend of ours, and lived down there for 3 years, and I nannied. And then my husband and I, since we had grown up together, knowing each other, we started talking and actually started dating when we were living 8 hours apart. And so the first year of our relationship was long distance, which I think was really good, but that's what brought me back home to Northern Indiana. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit of our story. Like I said, we live on my husband's family farm here in Goshen, and he farms full-time with his dad and his uncle and his cousin. And then we've got our 4.5-year-old Australian Shepherd named Merle. So
I love that.
Yes.
I want to know about this Nashville adventure. Usually you hear the, drop everything and run to Nashville if there's a music career involved. What was it that drew you to Nashville?
So, yeah, I always joke because people think, oh, you moved to Nashville for music. And I'm like, no, I grew up Mennonite. I can't even clap on beat. Like, I have no musical ability. My friend that was moving down, she was moving down for a job opportunity and just needed a roommate. And I was like, hey, I just graduated college. Like, I had graduated in May, and this was in August. And within about a month's notice, we moved down, and it was amazing. It was one of my favorite, just spontaneous things. And it was amazing to be down there. I love Nashville, the weather, the music, the food, just there's always something to do. And so.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you grew up Mennonite?
Yeah. So I always kind of hesitate to say that because a lot of people, so in our area, we have a lot of Amish, a lot of conservative Mennonites, and a lot of people are Mennonite. But when other people from other areas hear that, a lot of times they think like, oh my word, you're Amish. Like, can you even wear makeup or wear jewelry or anything? And then of course I start, a shop with selling jewelry. But no, so we grew up, yeah. And that's just as common as, in this area, it was just as common as being like Methodist or Baptist or anything else. So my husband and I are currently in a non-denominational church, but yeah, we both grew up in Mennonite churches. So
very cool. So not like the Mennonite that you drove the horse buggies around.
Right. But there are a lot of those in our area. So I always say, like, if you would walk into our church, you wouldn't be able to say like dress based on our dress or like makeup or jewelry or clothing or anything that, or anything other than another denomination. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you, and I actually in Canada used to live near like a Mennonite community.
Oh yeah.
So I'm somewhat familiar with the fact that there's just a lot of different, like people think it's this one, like no electricity.
Yes.
And
yeah,
I went to school with a couple of girls that came from a Mennonite community. So
we didn't wear like any coverings or anything. Like, so there's like Amish, and then there's conservative Mennonites, and there's even different districts in the church that have different rules or different things that they abide by. But yeah, we didn't have any coverings or any of that we'd wear, or skirts. So
I was about to make a joke. So it was like nudist Mennonite, no coverings. Yeah. Is that
right?
I didn't realize that level existed. But
nothing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's too funny.
Sounds like a wild upbringing.
Yes, yeah, crazy.
So you got back from Nashville. So first of all, you ended up dating your husband while you were in Nashville, but he was back in Indiana.
Yeah.
So how did you end up together if you're like that far apart?
honestly, it was all God. Like I said, we had grown up together. And so we were in the same friend group. He grew up on a farm. I grew up on a farm. So we had a lot of mutual friends from 4-H and just like the friends that we would hang out with. And so a lot of that is, you know, when I would come home from Nashville, we'd meet up with friends. And I mean, he was a friend of mine. And so earlier in college, I didn't really he's 3 years older than me. And I didn't really get the hint that he was somewhat interested. And so we went on a couple of what you could consider a date, but I had no idea that it was a date. And, we even joked the one time I called him buddy and he did not, not a fan of that. So,
he thought you friend zoned him.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. He jokes that his biggest life accomplishment is like making it out of the friend zone. So we were just kind of both in a place where I had come home a lot that summer. We were, with our group of friends and everything. And I was kind of like, what is going on? Because I'd find myself like, we'd be sitting down to dinner and he'd be across from me or beside me. And then this would have been in 2013, the fall of 2013. And he still had a flip phone. And so he's super old school, doesn't have social media, not a fan. And so I remember
he's a nudist Mennonite. So
yeah, exactly.
Fair.
So I remember being in Nashville and I was like, wow, this is weird. Carl is texting me, which to anybody else, it'd be like, oh, people text. And I'm like, what is going on? And then the more that I came home and we were all together, and then it was actually really sweet. Like I said, since our families all knew each other and everything, my dad and I had gone horseback riding one evening and Carl and I were going to hang out after that. And my dad, he's like, oh, what are you doing tonight? And I told him, I was like, yeah, we're going to go grab dinner. And he's like, if you and Carl ever want to be more than just friends, that would be a-okay with me, because I think an awful lot of that guy. And from literally from that moment and then the date, I was like, it's done. We're sign me up. That's so we actually went to dinner, and we are both very, very kind of sarcastic, funny. That's a big part of our marriage is laughter. And, I kind of joked because he picked me up and he was wearing a shirt from his family reunion that said Stoltzfus family reunion, not a nice shirt for a first date. And he was wearing that and he opened the door for me to the truck. And I was like, oh, wow, this is for sure a date. And so he opens the door to the truck and he's like, I was either going to wear a nice shirt or I was going to open the door, but I wasn't going to do both. And so anyway, we had our first date. It was kind of funny because we had been, like I said, since we had been friends for so long, it was kind of once we started dating, we were already 6 months along or further, because we knew each other's families. We knew everybody's friends. I knew exactly what type of person he was. And so I think that made the long distance too a lot easier, because there was no building that trust. We already had that. So that night, after he dropped me off at my parents', and like I said, I was still living in Nashville. I was just home for a short time, and he dropped me off and I was like, okay, so what are we? And he was like, whoa, okay. Yeah, that was it though. That was the beginning, and the rest is history, as they say. So
I love it. You should have been like, hey buddy, what are we?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, very cool. So you've been married 5 years, and one of the things that I guess kind of brought you onto our radar is some of the work that you're doing right now. You, I believe, own your own business, I guess is the important way to say it.
Yeah.
Or maybe the intimidating way to say it.
Right, exactly.
But it is a really cool business that you're doing right now. So first, why don't you tell me what it is that you do and how you first got started?
So I was working with the Noonday Collection, and that's how I met Christine. And so that I had actually started that just around the time that Carl and I were dating. I was in an office job that was just not fulfilling at all in Nashville for a very short time while I was kind of in between nannying for families. And just figuring out what I wanted to do. And so I was in this office job, and I don't know if you're involved like in much with Enneagram, but I'm a 7. And so I'm just.
Me too.
Are you?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I knew we'd get along. So, so I'm a 7, and I'm just, again, that's one of the reasons too. Actually, when I first started going to therapy, my therapist was like, can I try to, like, by the end, I'll try to figure out what number you are. And we were 5 minutes in, and she's like, are you a 7? Because I'm like, well, then I moved to Nashville and I'd never been there before. And Carl is a strong 8. Like, he is a very strong 8. So it makes it interesting at times. Yeah. So I was in that office job. I've always had a passion for fair trade and for artisan made items. And so I started working with Noonday Collection, and I was doing that while I was, like I said, down in Nashville. And then once I moved back home to Indiana, I continued that and really focused and poured my heart into that business. Through my time with Noonday, I was able to travel to Haiti and Uganda and Peru to visit these artisans. And so I knew the importance of artisan made items and fair trade and dignified work for these artisans. But it wasn't until, I was there in these countries and being able to see firsthand, no, this is truly making an incredible impact. And this is doing incredible things. And so I was with Noonday. Like I said, I started in 2013. And then by, I think it's 2015 or 2016, I was doing that, full time. I was traveling quite a bit to do trunk shows. And so that was kind of the thing where, obviously you're going into people's home and you're sharing the stories and sharing the jewelry. And it was, that was my biggest year with them. And it was, I went through and counted, and I had done 75 trunk shows that year, which was essentially 75 nights away from home. And as you can imagine with farming, my husband doesn't have a super flexible schedule. So it's not like I can say, hey, hon, be in by 5, or I need to leave or whatever. And so as we started talking about growing our family, I just really felt like that wasn't going to be sustainable for our lifestyle. And I knew that I wanted to continue advocating for artisans, and that was so important to me. And so I really just kind of tried to explore what I could do to kind of stay home more and kind of be around more. I was actually traveling a couple times a year back to Tennessee to do trunk shows down there. I was going into Michigan. I was just going all over because I was, I'm just with my husband, and we didn't have any kids. And so it just gave me the opportunity to be flexible. He was incredibly supportive. Yeah. Just looking into growing our family, we knew that wasn't going to necessarily be sustainable. And so the Lord really placed it on my heart to start a business. And when I felt that calling, I didn't really know what it looked like, but I kind of just kept stepping out in faith. And as I did that, the Mustard Seed Marketplace was born. And so that is the name of my shop. I started in May. Well, the idea came in May of 2017. And by August 2017, I launched and had my grand opening in our barn on our farm here. So we converted the old milk house into a shop. It was really cool, like I said, to see the way that the Lord just continued to place things in front of me that just lined up and made that work. And so I'm currently working with over 40 artisan groups in 18 countries. It's primarily jewelry and clothing, handbags, and that sort of thing. But everything is fair trade, locally made, and made here in the US, or different give back brands. Yeah, it's grown. And like I said, I started and it was in the barn, and now I'm getting ready to celebrate 1 year in a brick and mortar location, a store spot that I have in Middlebury, which is again where I grew up. And it has just been blessing after blessing, and just the opportunity that the Lord has given me and giving me that calling and gift and talent to do what I do. And it just feels like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be with that.
That's awesome. For those who maybe this is their first time even hearing like Noonday or artisans and this type of work, can you just give maybe like a snapshot of what does it mean? Like when you talk about working with artisans, what it is that you're talking about specifically?
Yeah. So anytime there's fair trade, we are working with artisans that are paid a fair wage. They are in safe working conditions. There is, like I said, even just getting paid fairly, but getting paid at all, getting treated fairly, the safe working conditions, no child labor or forced labor, slave labor, and it's just an incredible partnership. So often I think people kind of see vulnerable people in other countries and they want to just maybe give them a handout or charity, and so many of these artisans, they don't want that. They want dignified work. They want to provide for their family. They want they're so talented and they want to continue doing what they've done, and so many times it's passed on from generation to generation, this artisan skill set, whatever it may be, and they want to continue doing that, but they want to be able to provide for their family. And so this, by partnering with these groups in a fair trade manner, is giving them the opportunity to do that. To kind of put it in another way, I mean, if you go to a store and you see a t-shirt for $2, you can probably assume that t-shirt was not made under fair trade practices, and that person that made that was not paid fairly or treated fairly. And so a lot of times, fair trade items are a little bit higher price, but that's because that's taken into account and they are paid fairly. And another thing too is that a lot of people will ask for my shop, like, well, how much of this goes back to the artisans? And I always say, these items I have purchased, and so they have been paid in full. So whether I sell it or not, if I put it on sale, whatever I do, they have been paid fairly, and they've been paid up front. And so that's another unique thing too. And then in addition to that, I do give back to several organizations that are near and dear to my heart through my business as well. So
that's awesome. I love just that whole full circle of like you're serving the people that you're purchasing from. Mm-hmm. I actually took a look at your shop and just like the beautiful pieces that you can buy. So you're serving people, but then also giving back. I just think that's incredible.
Yeah. Thank you.
At the Mustard Seed Marketplace, they believe that your purchase makes a powerful impact, whether it's providing jobs for overcomers of sex trafficking or supporting small businesses. They want you to be able to shop the causes that you care most about. They're passionate about bringing you on-trend items with a greater purpose. Enjoy shopping their handmade creations from near and far as they create a marketplace for artisans around the globe. They've curated a collection of world-changing jewelry, apparel, handbags, and more for over 40 groups in over 15 countries. And every single item is fair trade, locally made, or give back brands. You can use our code HeyGirl15 for 15% off your entire purchase at themustardseedmarketplace.com. Now, this is a one-time use code. Again, HeyGirl15 for 15% off. Guys, the Mustard Seed Marketplace has so many great options for gift giving. This is the perfect time to start shopping for the holidays. Now, be sure to find them on Facebook and Instagram and check out their website often, as they're always getting new pieces. So once again, that's themustardseedmarketplace.com. Use our code HeyGirl15 for 15% off your entire purchase. And take this holiday to purchase gifts that make an incredible impact to people all around the globe. This is more out of like curiosity. In terms of COVID and everything that has impacted a lot of small business owners, how have things gone for you in this last season with all of the craziness that is right now?
Yeah. As I said, I opened my shop in November of last year at this new location. I'm actually it's an old mill. It was built in the 1800s, and it was the first building that was built in the town of Middlebury, which is where we're at. And I am with, there's 2 other shops in the building as well. And it's just this really unique shopping experience with all of us there. But we are also near Shipshewana, Indiana, which is a huge tourist town. They have one of the largest flea markets, and, people come from all over the country to go to Shipshewana. And so we get a lot of tourists in our area. And so we are also about 5 to 7 minutes where the shop is from Michigan. And so when everything shut down, I was actually closed for just about 50 days. And I remember leaving my shop and putting the sign up, we're closed, and thinking maybe in 2 weeks we'll reopen. And I just bawled the whole way home. And I talked to my husband, and I said, I just don't know when I'm going to be back. And he said, oh, honey, you can go back tomorrow. And I was like, no, I mean, to reopen. And this was because of what we've gone through in our life. And with infertility, my shop has been just such an answer to prayer. And it has been something that is just so near and dear to my heart. And so that was really, really tough to leave the shop, not knowing if or when or how I would reopen. But I was so incredibly thankful, and I'm just grateful for the community that rallied around me during that time through my website and through online sales. So I was still able to continue purchasing from artisans. And that was the big thing too, is just in that time, yes, I mean, it's my business, but it's all these other businesses. It's all these other artisan groups that are relying on this. That was just a pretty big burden, and just felt really heavy on my heart that, I'll be okay. My husband and I will be okay, but will these other people be okay if we're not able to continue purchasing? And so, like I said, I was closed it was actually 47 days, and then we reopened, and I didn't know what that would look like, but we had a crazy May and June, and then it's carried on now into the other months. Because I had just opened my shop mid-November, and then I closed mid-March, I didn't really know what the norm is with traffic and sales and all of that in that area. And we got so many people from Michigan because their whole state was still closed down. And so everybody was just flocking to our area. And so, it was such a blessing. I joked that when we reopened, it was a Tuesday, and I remember someone said, well, how was it? And I said, well, it was just like a Saturday during the holidays, except for it was Tuesday during a pandemic. So that was a complete blessing, though, that it was just as busy as it was, and just seeing how people wanted to show up and support small local businesses was probably one of just the biggest blessings and encouragements that we could get. So yeah, it's just, we're gearing up for the holidays now, and we're just hoping that things continue in the right direction. So
I was going to say, if a Tuesday during the pandemic, imagine holidays during. Yikes.
I know.
So Lisa, you mentioned something that I didn't know about your story, but in terms of this shop being a gift in your journey with infertility, what has been that part of your story? I know we have actually a number of listeners who have written in. It's interesting that you say that now, because a lot of what they've written in has been their own journey with that. Mm-hmm. And so I can't help but just think God's timing in, because again, I didn't know this about your story, but just how clearly this is part of your testimony at a time when, at least from the circles of people that I hear from, it seems like there are a lot of women walking that road right now.
Yeah, that is a huge part of my story, as my husband and I have been walking through infertility for almost 4 years now. Kind of going back to the shop, I started that in August of 2017, but we had started trying to grow our family in January of 2017. And there was just a lot of things along the way that I felt like the Lord was, prompting me to start the shop, but also we just really felt like that was the time that we wanted to grow our family. And so that's a lot of the reason why the shop was even started, was because, like I said, to be able to slow down and wanting to have our family, and for me to be home. So we started trying in 2017 in January. And I look back on that time, and I feel so naive in so many ways, but it was so full of hope. And it was so full of just those feelings of, okay, well, everything else has lined up in all these ways. Like, why wouldn't this too? And so I remember that, we started trying, and I had actually qualified to go on a trip with Noonday to Peru, and that was in June. And I remember like, okay, I got to make sure I have the best travel insurance because I'm actually not going on the trip. I'm going to be pregnant by then. And so I had everything planned out, and, God had other plans, and we're still watching those plans unfold. But we started trying, and, my doctor recommended that I go on a prenatal and everything. And so I remember going into CVS, and I was like, oh yeah, like I'm basically already pregnant. Like I'm like buying my prenatals and like checking out, like just waiting for somebody to ask. And like, it was just, to me, why wouldn't it happen that way kind of thing? And so, we're so hopeful. Tried for a year. Then we met with a fertility specialist in January of 2018. That doctor, checked into everything, and my husband was tested and checked out, and things checked out on me, and everything looked great. That was a really hard time because obviously it felt like something wasn't right because it wasn't working. But to my logical husband, he was like, well, we're just not being patient enough. Like, we just need to keep trying. And so for a couple months, like, it was for him and I in our marriage, it was really, really tough because I felt like he wasn't supporting me in the desires that I had, and he felt like I wasn't being patient. And it was just after Mother's Day of 2018 where we were at a church service, and like I just like lost it and just like had to leave and go out to the restroom. And I know that in that time, like, God was working on my heart, and God was working on his heart in different ways. And so it was after that he said, I think we need to try something. And so I remember, during that time though, too, just like crying out to God, like, why would you give me this desire to be a mom if you're not going to fulfill it? And so we went down to the fertility clinic again and, talked and explored next steps. And based on all of our test results, our fertility doctor was really confident with trying out IUI. And so we tried that in June of 2018. I remember thinking like, okay, again, like this is it, like this has to be it. And it didn't work. I went down in July, that was my birthday month. I turned 30. And again, like you feel like too, just that the time is ticking, and, everyone around you is having babies and getting pregnant just by talking about it. And in July of 2018, I went down for an ultrasound to be able to start the IUI process again. And they found some really large cysts because of the Clomid that I was taking from the previous cycle. And so I just felt like I had taken 15 steps in the wrong direction. They wanted to put me on birth control for a couple weeks just because of the cysts. And all I wanted for my 30th birthday was just to be pregnant. Like, that's all I wanted. So this felt like just a slap in the face. And, that month was really, really, really hard. And I went on to, in August, we were going to be out of town. That's the hard thing too with infertility is like timing out, and like to be able to do treatments, for us doing the IUIs, you go down on certain days and you have different things you have to do at different times. And like, if it doesn't line up, it's just like, well, that month just, you can't do it. And so that was like, again, for a planner and somebody who wants to be in control, that is a really hard thing. But we were down in Florida in August. So we're like, all right, we're going to take, this month off. And we tried again in September, and that was also not successful. And I remember thinking too, like, just all the things that infertility robs you of, but also trying to conceive in that way and with treatments. Although obviously we would have been thrilled if it worked, I just kept thinking like, why can't we just have it happen like everybody else? Obviously we had told our close friends and family about doing the IUI. And so it's like, everybody knows you're going to find out in 2 weeks, one way or another. And so there's not that surprise element like there is for most people, where you can hold on to that secret and that surprise, just your spouse and you. And that was in September, like I said, that was not successful. And then for my business at the time, I was doing a lot of markets and different things with my business. And then my husband with farming, with harvest, it's just like crazy time, you know? And so we tried, you know, obviously naturally throughout that time, but we tried to hold off for a little bit through that time to do our third IUI. And our doctor had basically said, statistically speaking, for us specifically, he just said, like, if you try it 3 times and it doesn't work, like, that probably isn't gonna work for you. October and November passed, and we actually went down Christmas Eve to do our third IUI. At that time, I just kept like praying, like, Lord, like, let this be, like, just look at this Christmas miracle. Like, this could be, you know, this could be the time. And so we were in the 2-week wait to find out if I was pregnant or not. And the Lord had really placed it on my heart to share my story openly online. So many of our friends and even some of our family didn't have any idea what we were walking through. And I know it's, you know, the Lord uses, you know, speaks through people in different ways. And I don't discount anyone who decides not to share their story. But for me personally, I know I was so encouraged by the people that shared openly during that time, as I was not sharing, and I could see their stories and kind of lean on that and know that I wasn't alone. And I felt like now is the time to share. And so on New Year's Day of 2019, I shared my story and I shared how we had gone through this process and IUIs and all these things and just the disappointment that comes with infertility. And, you know, the outpouring of people and people reaching out saying, you know, they had been walking through this for years and like they've never told anyone, or maybe they had a miscarriage and they've never told anyone other than their spouse. And like just what I feel like people came forward sharing was just like so powerful. And then on January 5th, I found out I was pregnant, and suddenly I felt like a complete imposter in this world of infertility. I felt like Satan was saying, like, see, you shouldn't have shared anything, because like no one, you know, who are you to share now? Like, look at, you know, completely just discounting everything that we had previously walked through. You know, I had women that had reached out saying, like, let's grab coffee. Like, I need to talk to someone. And I just felt like, how could I talk to anybody now who's walking through this knowing that I'm pregnant? You know, we found out January 5th, and then January 29th, we were going down for our first ultrasound. And up until then, blood level, everything had checked out. All my levels had checked out well, and went down for the ultrasound, and the sac was empty. And so, like, to be honest, I was initially just like, you know, in shock, but also I feel like my 7-ness, I like tried to protect myself, and I was like, it's fine. Like, it's fine. I'm fine. It's okay. That was the first and only time I have ever seen my husband cry. And so I felt like I needed to hold it together too for him. And, you know, of course it's hard to, because everybody just processes so differently. And so he was processing it one way, and I was a much more delayed processor. It took more like months for me to process and grieve, whereas he was more in the first, you know, couple days, and then kind of moved on with things. And so we, you know, working through that, that was really tough. I went on to, I wanted to be able to at least, you know, naturally miscarry. That was one thing. I didn't want to have a DNC. I didn't want to do the medication. And I just felt like, Lord, can you at least give me this? Can you at least just let this happen naturally? It took almost a full month, and I was able to naturally miscarry at home and pass everything. And we were really confident that everything had passed. And that was just a really special and sacred time too, at home with my husband. And then we went for the 2-week follow-up, and based on what I was telling the doctor, he's like, yeah, everything sounds good. It sounds like everything is good. And I shared with him that I was going to be going down to Florida on that Sunday. My appointment was on a Friday, and I was going to be leaving on Sunday to go down with a friend. She is another friend I met through Noonday, and her friendship has been a gift. And she had been walking through a lot of hard things too. And so she's like, you need sunshine. Like, this is at this point we're in March, and she's like, you need some sunshine, because Indiana has a tendency to be incredibly gloomy and cold. And so I was going to be going down. And so my doctor was like, well, let's just do an ultrasound, because you're going to be out of town. I want to make sure everything is good. And they found like literally a 1/2-inch piece of tissue that they said they wanted to remove with a DNC. And so after all that I had been through, I just felt like, Lord, like, that was the one thing I didn't want to do a DNC. And then to come that far, and then, it started January 29th, we found out, and my DNC wasn't until March 8th. And so it was just this incredibly long, drawn out process. We decided to go ahead and do that. I had never been under anesthesia for anything. I had never had like a surgery of any sort. So this was just like a really big deal. But throughout this entire process, I feel like the Lord was just like, trust me, like, let go, surrender, trust me. We were scheduled that Friday night then, and my doctor called me while we were out. We had a few hours in between, and he called me and said, okay, I'm not going to be able to actually do the surgery. It's scheduled too late. You'll have Dr. So-and-so. And then of course, my anxiety is like, okay, well, I don't know who this is. And I'm just like, okay, so I'm like looking them up online and see, and I'm like, I don't know, all the things. And so I got to the hospital, and I walked back, and the whole hallway was filled with butterfly art. That for me in this journey has been significant, as our pastor had shared one story. It's a story I think you can just like Google the butterfly story, but essentially it talks about how the caterpillar and coming out of the cocoon, and as a butterfly emerging, there was this little boy that was trying to help it, and he cut it out of the cocoon. And when it emerged, the wings were shriveled up and it couldn't fly. And a scientist shared that, as the caterpillar, as the butterfly is emerging from the cocoon, pushing out is essentially what like helps its wings to extend and to be able to fly. And so essentially the struggle is what gets you to what you are made to be. And so that whole like story has just really stuck with me this entire time. And so I walked back, and I just saw all those butterflies, and I was just filled with peace, because I just felt like the Lord was saying, like, I know it's been a struggle, and I know it's been hard, but just trust me, and like, it's going to be worth it. And so as I got back there, I had a nurse come back, and she came back and told me, okay, your doctor has actually changed again. It's going to be, and she tells me it's going to be this other doctor. And I about fell off the bed, because my sister, her story is a whole nother story that is just like so powerful, but she has had 3 stillborns, and she has seen a high risk specialist. And I was familiar with that doctor because of going to appointments with her. And they walked back and said, you're going to have Dr. Wheeler. And I only knew him because of being her doctor. It just, again, felt like God. I mean, he was literally in every detail. And so that's who did the DNC. And every step of the way, it felt like God was just saying, like, hey, I've got this. You're in my hand. Like, I got this, and you're going to be okay. I went on to Florida, like I said, on Sunday. And then on Monday, I got an email from my very best childhood friend. We're still best friends, and we've been best friends since we were 4. She had sent an email just because she wanted to be able to get everything out, and essentially said, I'm pregnant, and our due dates were 2 days apart of what should have been my due date. She shared with me so graciously and so kind, but it just, again, felt like a roller coaster of emotion. Lord, like, we should have been doing this together. Like, why on the timing? Like, why not a month later or a month earlier? Why so close? And so my due date should have been September 17th, 2019. And she had her little boy on September 18th of 2019. And so just incredibly bittersweet. So thrilled for them and their family, but knowing that like I said, we should have been doing that together. Our kids should have been growing up together, and seeing him and knowing that's a constant reminder of what we lost and what we, the stages that we'd be going through at the same time. And so I so badly desired to be pregnant by my due date, what should have been my due date, and just said like, Lord, like redeem this somehow. We ended up doing a 4th IUI in June. We did not tell anyone. We decided we're not going to tell anyone. And it's just my husband and I, and we can surprise everybody like every other couple seems to do. And before we even found out if it had worked or not, I remember standing in the kitchen and I just collapsed into my husband's arms. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. Like the constant, I mean, obviously the medications and what's that doing to you, but the constant feeling of like disappointment each month, but then followed by the immediate, like, stay positive. You need to stay positive because this could be the month. And, don't be stressed and all these things. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. That also was not successful. Our 4th IUI. And so we just took some time off and we said, we barely even talked about it, which was a real change from like, every conversation it seemed like revolved around infertility or conceiving or what was our next step? What was our plan? And so that was in June of 2019. And we decided, all right, we're just taking some time off. And so it was about a full year that we did anything. I actually just had surgery in August of this year for endometriosis. And that was something that was never on the radar before at all. The fertility specialist never said anything. My OB never said anything. Through a series of just what I feel like was just God in those details, people reaching out to me. I feel like he really revealed that like this could be an issue. And so I had somebody reach out and just say, hey, like we've been walking this too. This is a doctor that I really recommend. And we've been seeing him and we feel very hopeful. And so I got in with him in June and right away, he was just amazing, a complete godsend. I love the way that he's a Christian and he just, from the first appointment, and I said something about him being a Christian and he's like, oh, well then you already know it's all him anyway, like talking about God. And at my surgery, after he came out and spoke to my husband, he just said, this should definitely increase your chances, but it's in God's hands. And we've known that from the very beginning. But, I think a lot of our doctors in the past had a tendency to kind of promise or guarantee that this should work or that should work. Right. Yeah. It's been a journey. It's been a lot.
I wonder, I know you're obviously still kind of walking this journey, but is there anything that you would want to say to encourage another sister who's kind of on this road, maybe earlier on, or even in a similar place that you're in right now?
Yeah. I think the big thing for me has just been giving myself grace, giving myself permission to feel the hard things, giving myself permission to step away from situations where it's just too hard. Because I think as a society, we kind of just get thrown into a lot of situations where, whether it be just even seeing pregnancy announcements on Facebook or social media and taking that time to say, okay, I need to get off of here. Like I can't see another thing. Or, maybe it's that you're not able to go to a baby shower that someone's having, and like giving yourself that permission. It's okay because it is so hard. And I mean, I hate to say, but just being completely honest and open, infertility has definitely been the biggest thing in my life to bring out bitterness and resentment and comparison. And it's really, really easy to look at other people's stories and just say like, well, of course that happened for them. Or I have just continually been praying that the Lord would work on my heart in that, and just to show his goodness in the other details. And it's easy for me to say it's all in his plan, his timing and his plan. And I truly, truly do believe that. And then I also catch myself, trying to just justify or make deals or say, okay, well, like I learned this lesson, what, like now can it happen? Or like, look how far I've come, or, even just as I've shared openly, just even thinking like, Lord, look how much glory you could like get from this, because look at all these people that are praying for us and seeing our story, and like just letting your goodness shine through in that. And I know he's not done writing our story, but I constantly catch myself, and I have to remind myself that our God is not a God of deals. It's a lot. Like, it's just hard. So I think I would just say, like, just give yourself grace.
I appreciate so much your willingness just to be vulnerable, even in terms of this is what this can bring out of me. That's not good. And I don't know, even just hearing I feel like it's good for all of us to hear these stories, even if it's not a journey that we walk, because it also helps us to know how to walk with our sisters who are facing these things, right, and to also be gracious and even just sensitive to that. I know this has just meant a lot for me to hear today. So thank you so much, Lisa, for being willing to share.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So just as we get ready to wrap up here, you obviously have your shop. It is something, as you mentioned, that God's been using in your life. But it's also a place that, regardless of where our listeners live, they can order, correct?
Yes.
Online?
So I have everything listed online. It's the mustardseedmarketplace.com, but you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, also under the Mustard Seed Marketplace. We're constantly getting in new fun things, and we have a ton of products for fall and winter, and it makes the best Christmas gifts, anytime, but especially for the holidays too. So yeah, you can check us out online.
I love that. And Lisa, if any of our listeners wanted to reach out to you personally, even just to thank you for sharing, what's the best place they can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram under Lisa K. Stoltzfus. I don't know if that can be like linked somewhere here, because I'm sure no one can spell Stoltzfus. But yeah.
I would like to see them try.
Exactly. So yeah, and I feel like mostly my personal account is filled with either, sharing about our infertility journey or sharing pictures of my dog. So it's one or the other. that and farm life. So yeah, you can find me there as well.
Well, again, Lisa, thank you so much for being willing to share today, and yes, for coming on the show. It was so nice to finally meet you.
You too. It was a blast hanging out, and yeah, I thank you for having me. So.